It was a bright Saturday morning in Los Angeles when Corde Broadus found himself knee-deep in boxes stacked high in the garage. He hadn't planned on spending his weekend this way, but his mother, Shante, had insisted it was time to clear out some of the old stuff. Childhood toys, dusty vinyl records, boxes labeled Dad's Studio, and a sea of tangled cables filled every corner. As he lifted one particularly heavy box labeled Miskin 90s, something unusual caught his eye. A battered, unmarked VHS tape, its label faded to the point of invisibility, sat wedged between some cracked jewel CD cases and an old camcorder. Curiosity hit him hard. Why wasn't this labeled? What was so important, or maybe so secret, that it got buried in the back of the garage, untouched for decades? His heartbeat quickened as his mind raced with possibilities. Corde brushed off the dust and turned it over in his hands. No writing, no markings, just an old, forgotten piece of plastic that seemed to hum with mystery. He glanced around, half expecting someone to stop him. But the garage was silent except for the faint buzz of the neighborhood outside. A smirk crept onto his face. "Well, let's see what you are." Pushing aside a few more boxes, he dragged out the ancient VCR player his dad refused to throw away. Miraculously, it still had power cords attached. He connected it to an old TV sitting on the workbench and slid the tape in. The screen flickered, static lines dancing before the image stabilized. For a moment, nothing. Then the familiar yet startlingly younger face of his father, Calvin Broadus, known to the world as Snoop Dogg, filled the screen. But this wasn't the Snoop the world knew. This wasn't the smooth, always laid-back icon with the charismatic grin and timeless swagger. No, this version looked raw, unpolished, vulnerable. Sitting in a dim room, likely in the mid-90s judging by the baggy plaid shirt and the faint smoke swirling in the background, young Snoop leaned toward the camera, resting his elbows on his knees. "All right, if somebody's watching this, then I guess that means—" His voice trailed off for a second. He sighed deeply, rubbing his hands over his face. "It means I ain't here to tell it to you myself." Corde's heart dropped. "What?" Snoop stared straight into the lens. "I don't know if I'm gonna make it, man. Not gonna lie. Life crazy right now. Every day, somebody gone. Every day. I wonder if I'm next." Corde froze. His stomach tightened. This wasn't a studio recording. This wasn't for a track, a music video, or a documentary. This was personal. He instinctively reached for the remote, ready to pause. Maybe he shouldn't be watching this. Maybe it wasn't meant for anyone but the man who recorded it. But his thumb hovered over the button and never pressed it. If his dad made this, maybe, just maybe, it was meant to be found. But before diving deeper into what was on that tape, if you want to know what was on that tape, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you ain't ready for what's coming next. Taking a deep breath, Corde sat back down. For years, he'd wrestled with what it meant to be the son of Snoop Dogg. People always had expectations, that he'd be a rapper, that he'd live the same wild life, that he'd follow the same path. But Corde wasn't sure who he wanted to be, only that understanding his father better felt like the missing piece to figuring himself out. And now, here it was. On a dusty tape, hidden in the back of the garage, waiting to change everything. His finger hovered once more over the play button. "All right, Dad, let's see what you got to say." And with a click, the story began. The screen buzzed with static for a moment before the image sharpened. Young Calvin Broadus shifted in his seat, exhaling slowly, as if the act of recording this took more courage than facing a crowd of thousands. "I don't know who's watching this, but if it's you, my kid, my family, man—" He paused, gripping his hands together. His eyes were sharp, but weighed down with something Corde had never seen in his father before. Fear. Real, unfiltered fear. "I gotta get this out somewhere. 'Cause I can't say it out loud. Not to nobody." His gaze flicked away from the camera for a second before locking back in. "I've been living this life, right? Hustling, grinding, blowing up in the music, but it come with things nobody tells you about." Corde leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes wide, almost forgetting to breathe. I ain't going front. Some nights, I wonder if I'm even gonna make it to C30. Got homies dropping left and right, some to the streets, some to the pen. Some to their own demons. Snoop's voice trembled, and for a moment he looked down, hands clasped tight as if holding himself together. A deep inhale followed. Everybody sees Snoop Dogg. The rapper, the show, the smoke, the fun. But behind that, man, it's a war zone sometimes. Out here, people smile in your face and got a blade behind their back. One wrong move, one wrong word. And it's lights out. Corde sat frozen, his heartbeat thudding loud in his ears. He never imagined his father, the cool, unshakable figure, had ever been this close to breaking. Then Snoop's voice lowered. And I be thinking, if one day I don't come home, what they gonna know about me? Who's gonna tell 'em what I was really feeling? What I was really fighting? His fingers tapped nervously on his knee. For real, sometimes I be scared, man. He chuckled bitterly, shaking his head. Crazy to say that, huh? Snoop Dogg scared. The silence that followed felt deafening. Corde instinctively grabbed the remote and paused. His chest tightened. This was overwhelming. Hearing this side of his father, the side the world never knew, felt like opening a door to a part of the family history nobody ever talked about. Yo, Ma! Ma, come here! He shouted toward the house. Moments later, Shante walked in, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. What, you find something crazy in there again? You gotta see this, Corde stammered. He pressed play. As the video resumed, Snoop continued. If I'm talking to you, my kid, just know it ain't all gold chains and Grammys. It's nights where you don't know if the car following you is just a fan or somebody trying to end you. Shante gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth. Her eyes glassed over instantly. Oh my God. Snoop's voice cracked for the first time. I be thinking, what if I don't get to be there? What if I don't get to show you how to be a man, how to survive, how to love? He chuckled sadly. Yeah, love. Crazy, huh? All this mess. And that's all I really want. To love and be loved and see y'all make it. Corde turned to his mom. Did you ever hear him talk like this? Shante shook her head, eyes locked on the screen, unable to speak. Her strong, resilient face softened with a pain Corde hadn't seen before. Never like this, she whispered. The video flickered, as if the tape itself struggled under the weight of what it was revealing. And then, as if sensing the heaviness, young Snoop leaned closer to the camera. There's more I gotta say, a lot more, because if you ever see this, you need to know it all. Corde and Shante exchanged a look, part fear, part anticipation, because whatever came next was going to change everything. The tape crackled for a brief moment, the screen warping before steadying again. Young Snoop sat back, rubbing his chin, then leaning forward like he was about to deliver the most important message of his life. I don't know if I ever told you all this, he began, voice softer now, but everything I've been doing, every studio session, every stage, every deal I made, it ain't just about me. It's about breaking the curse. Corde felt a chill. Breaking the curse? Snoop exhaled slowly, gathering his thoughts. See, I grew up watching how the streets eat people alive, how brothers turn on brothers, how folks get caught up in money and pride in hate, and I promised myself, if I ever made it out, as if I ever had kids, I'd make sure they ain't have to live that same life. His eyes glistened, blinking back the weight of memories. But it wasn't easy. Man, y'all don't even know. I almost ain't make it more times than I can count. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. I never told nobody this. Not the media, not the homies, not even your mum. He paused, swallowing hard. There was a night I almost ain't come home. Corde and Shante leaned in unconsciously, breath held. There was somebody close. Somebody I trusted. Set me up. His hands clenched into fists. I got the call. Said they was waiting for me. Waiting to take me out. Over what? Jealousy, money, pride. Same old story. The pain in his voice was undeniable. I sat in my car for 2 hours holding something that could have ended it all. Thought about rolling up on him first, getting the drop. But something told me to stop, told me, this ain't your path no more. Snoop rubbed his face, his body visibly trembling on the tape. That night, I realized I gotta choose. I can't be halfway in the streets and halfway in the music. I gotta be a father. I gotta be a man my family can be proud of. The video paused for a second, as if the camera was switched off briefly, then flickered back on. When it did, Snoop was holding an old photo, a picture of Nana Beverly, his late mother. She told me, "Baby, God got bigger plans for you. But you gotta leave all that behind." He chuckled, wiping a tear from his eye. Didn't listen right away, but man, I hear her now. Then his tone shifted, a little brighter, a little stronger. If you watching this, Corde, Julian, Corey, even if you wasn't born yet, I need y'all to know, you ain't gotta be me. You ain't gotta fight the same fights. I fought 'em so you wouldn't have to. Corde's chest tightened. Hearing his father say his name, decades before this moment, was like being punched in the heart. And you gon' hear stories. People gon' tell you about who I was, what I did. But don't let none of that define you. You ain't my shadow, you my light. You the proof that everything I went through wasn't for nothing. Shante wiped tears from her face, shaking her head in disbelief. I never heard him speak like this, she whispered, her voice cracking. Then the tape shifted again. Snoop leaned back, almost smiling now, though the sadness lingered beneath. And don't ever forget, we come from survivors, from warriors, from folks who prayed when they had nothing but faith. The screen faded momentarily to black, then popped back on, this time showing a younger Snoop standing in front of a small house. That right there, his voice said off camera. That's where Nana Beverly raised me, where I learned how to be who I am, and where I learned what love really means. Corde swallowed hard. He was starting to realize this wasn't just a tape. It was a map to everything his father had hidden, and everything Corde never knew he needed to understand. The video shifted to a shaky, handheld shot, panning across the familiar streets of Long Beach. Young Snoop's voice narrated from behind the camera, softer now, reflective. You see, this neighborhood? This is where everything started, where I learned how to survive and how easy it is to lose yourself. The camera paused on a modest house, chipped paint, a crooked fence, and an old tree out front. This was Nana Beverly's house, Snoop continued. This is where she prayed every day for me to make it out. Where Uncle Junebug taught me how to hold my head high when the world tried to push me down. Corde felt a lump form in his throat. He'd heard bits and pieces about this house, about Nana's strength, but seeing it through his father's eyes, hearing the reverence in his voice was different. Back on screen, young Snoop set the camera down, framing himself once again. His expression had shifted. Less fear now, more determination. I'm making this tape, and not because I think I'm going to be famous forever, but because if something happens, I want you all to know where you come from. I want you to know that everything I ever did, the music, the grind, it wasn't about the money. It was about making sure y'all never had to stand on these corners wondering if you gon' make it home. Snoop leaned forward, his fingers steepled. I want you to remember, your roots ain't something to be ashamed of. This struggle, it built me. And it'll remind you that no matter how far you go, you always got a place you belong. Then came the shift, the moment that hit like a thunderclap. His eyes dropped, hands fidgeting. But I gotta be real with you, I almost ain't make it. There was one night, a night I ain't never told nobody about, not even your mom. Corde and Shante exchanged a tense glance, bracing themselves. I was set up. Somebody I trusted, somebody from right here, tried to line me up over money, jealousy, who knows. I was sitting in the car, gun on my lap, thinking about going over there and handling it the way the streets taught me. His hands trembled on the tape. But something stopped me. I remember sitting there, staring at the rear view, and hearing Nana's voice in my head saying, "This ain't you, baby. You better than this." Snoop leaned back, eyes staring off into some memory only he could see. That was the night I made the choice. No more halfway. I ain't gonna be halfway in the streets and halfway in the music. I had to be all in, or I was gonna end up dead or in jail like everybody else. Tears welled in Shantae's eyes. Corde felt his chest tighten, every word hitting harder than the last. The tape flickered again. Now young Snoop was sitting outside, staring at the horizon. "I chose y'all," he said quietly. "I chose my family. I chose life." A sudden beep from the tape warned that it was nearing its end. But just before it did, Snoop leaned back into the camera with one last powerful message. "If you, my son, watching this, I need you to understand, you ain't gotta be me. You ain't gotta wear my name like it's something heavy. You carry it 'cause it's light, 'cause it means you come from somebody who fought every day, so you wouldn't have to fight the same way." Corde covered his mouth, tears threatening to spill. His father's voice, young, trembling, but powerful, cut straight through him. "I love you," Snoop said quietly, "even if I'm not there to say it. I love you, don't ever forget that." The screen glitched, then turned to static. Silence. Corde and Shantae sat frozen, the weight of the message sinking deep into their bones. This was more than a tape. This was a legacy, and nothing would ever be the same again. The static faded, leaving the screen dark, but the words hung heavy in the air like thunder after a storm. Corde sat there, gripping the arms of the chair, staring at the blank screen as if it might somehow give him more. Shantae wiped her eyes, quietly setting the remote down, her lips trembling but curved in the faintest smile. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the old VCR still running, as if reluctant to accept that the tape and the message had truly come to an end. Corde finally stood, pacing the garage with hands on his head, trying to process the flood of emotions crashing over him. "I had no idea," he whispered. "I thought I knew Dad, but I didn't. Not like this." Shantae nodded, swallowing hard. "Neither did I, baby, neither did I." Her voice cracked, but there was pride in it. Pride for the man who had carried so much alone to protect the ones he loved. Corde turned back to the TV, shaking his head in disbelief. "All this time, I thought his story was just about the fame, the music, the hustle. But it was never about that. It was about surviving, about making sure. We never had to see the things he saw." He knelt by the tape, gently removing it from the VCR like it was some sacred artifact. This can't just stay here in a box," he said firmly. This is our history, our family's truth." Shantae stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We should digitize it, keep it safe. Make sure the next generation knows where they come from." Her eyes softened. "Your daddy's legacy. It ain't the chains or the platinum records. It's this, right here." That evening, the family gathered in the living room. Corde shared what he'd found. As the tape played again, tears fell, but so did laughter. Laughter at old stories, at familiar voices of loved ones no longer here, and at memories they didn't even know existed. Corey whispered, "I never knew Dad went through all that." Julian nodded, gripping her hand. "Makes me see everything different." As the sun dipped below the LA skyline, something shifted within them, a deeper understanding, a bridge between generations built not on fame or fortune, but on resilience, sacrifice, and love. Corde stood near the window, looking out as the city lights blinked to life. For the first time, the weight of being Snoop Dogg's son didn't feel like a shadow. It felt like armor, like foundation. His father's words echoed in his mind. "You ain't my shadow, you my light." Smiling to himself, Corde whispered, "I hear you, Pops. I hear you." A sense of peace settled over him. His path didn't have to be the same. He didn't have to rap, didn't have to chase fame, didn't have to be anyone except himself, because his father had already fought the battles that gave him that freedom. As the night wrapped around the family like a blanket, they sat together, swapping stories, sharing memories, and promising to never let this history fade again. This wasn't just the story of Snoop Dogg. This was the story of every Broadus who came before, and everyone who would come after. And as Corde stood, ready to face whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain. The past didn't define him. It empowered him. Yo, if this story hit you the way it hit me, make sure to subscribe and don't forget to click the next video on screen. 'Cause this journey, it's just getting started.